really good to be with you guys this morning. So we're going to give a little recap of Gimli Bible Camp, just the summer we had last year, what we're looking forward to this year, and then we're just going to branch into a little sermon at the end here. So we're just really excited. Last year we saw lots of really good fruit from our ministry and our time at camp. So we got a couple of kids that gave their life to Jesus, and it's always the highlight of our summer. It's just amazing when cabin leaders come in the morning meeting and say, oh man, one of my kids gave their life to Jesus. It's just amazing. So one of the stories last year in Youth Week, one of the girls came to salvation, and it's amazing. And it doesn't stop there for us at Gimli Bible Camp. We want to see them discipled. We want to see them in churches, right? We know they don't have good support groups at home. They don't got a parent that's going to drive them to church. They don't got Christian friends and stuff. So anyways, this one girl in particular, our discipleship coordinator, did a really good job of integrating her into a youth group that was in her neighborhood. So went with her a number of times and just helped her feel comfortable and understand a little bit of church culture, because it's all really different for someone who's never stepped foot in a church before. And a couple months later, that youth pastor said, she's one of ours. Like, she belongs, she's in. Right? And man, that's good news, because it's what young people want. They want belonging, they want community, it's what they need. And it's amazing to hear that. And I just got news recently that she's getting baptized in that church really soon now too. Right? So just amazing to see that fruit of these kids, right? Unsaved homes, they come to camp, they meet Jesus, right? And just transformed. And we've had a number of kids in the last few years that have got baptized. And it's just amazing to see that fruit. So I'm going to let Amanda come up and just share a few stories of camp from last year. She had an opportunity to jump right into it. So.
Hi. So TJ just asked me to share a few stories from my summer. I did have a chance to be in cabin. It started almost like a bit of a joke, and it actually happened. We were really low on female staff, and I was like, well, TJ, why don't you stay home and farm and take care of kids, and I'll go to camp. And that's exactly what happened. And so I ended up going to camp for 1 week, which turned into 2 weeks, which were the highlight of my summer. They were great weeks. They were really hard. I slept for days afterwards. I didn't bounce back quite as quick as I would have liked. But yeah, you can see I'm second from the left here. That's me. So this was my teen week cabin. Really challenging. Before I go to that, I'll just tell you about my first week a little bit. My first week, I was partnered with, first of all, I hadn't cabin led since I was about 16 years old. So I hadn't done it in something like 18 years. I had no idea if I was going to be a good cabin leader, if I just had no idea. But I wanted to spend time with these kids. So my first week was 11-year-old girls. And I was partnered with one of the lifeguards, so most of the time she was at the beach. Like whenever the beach was open, she was at the beach. And so I pretty much had 7 girls to myself for the week, pretty much, which was actually just wonderful. It was a really fun group. They gelled really well. They got along with each other really well. They had really good questions. 4 of the girls in my cabin had never owned a Bible before, and so I had a chance. The church has Bibles and other resources there, so I had a chance to give these girls their first Bible, and we wrote their names in them. It was just a really exciting week because they were actually excited to have this. They had questions. I was showing them how to find verses, and they were reading out loud during our cabin devotion times, and that was very thrilling for me, just to be a part of just hearing them question and things. And none of the cabin girls gave their lives to Jesus that week. But I had a conversation with one girl. She talked about herself. She described herself. She says, yeah, I believe the things that I'm hearing. I think Jesus is real, and I'm not quite ready to trust him. And I believe that Jesus is real. I believe in what I'm hearing, and I'm ready to trust him. She's like, I'm right in between there. So we had a really long conversation one night, and at one point, she was like, okay. She said, okay, and then she hung her head down like this. She says, I'll do it. And I'm like, do what? She's like, I'll give my life to Jesus. And I'm like, whoa, let's talk some more. This isn't what it should be like, right? Let's talk about this. Let me help you. So I just asked her a bunch of questions. We unpacked up kind of what was in her heart and in her mind. And at the end of it, it was disappointing, but I felt like, she said, I actually don't think you're ready to give your life to Jesus and she's like, yeah, you're right. I'm not quite ready. So it was kind of a toss-up, right? Because we're so pumped when kids give their lives to Jesus, and I absolutely believe that girl will but she had a lot of things in her heart that were conflicting, and she wasn't ready. It felt like a bitter thing to her. And so that was kind of disappointing, but I'm really excited. I've seen her since at a discipleship retreat. She came to one of our weekend retreats, and I had a chance to talk with her some more. So she's going to keep coming. That was her first summer ever. And so I think that the Lord started something, and it'll just take a little time. So anyway, after that week, though, I was really pumped. They're like, hey, want to do team week too? And I'm like, yes, I want to do team week. That was awesome. These girls are like asking questions. We're getting into the Bible, and it was so good. And then I got these girls, and the week was totally different. It was actually really, really difficult. I can't possibly tell you every one of these girls' stories, but two of the girls on this screen, two of the girls on the screen had lost a sibling to a drug overdose within half a year. One had been 6 months ago, one had been 2 months ago. And they had no space, no concept of grieving. Like, they were just so shut down and angry. You know, there was no space for them to grieve, which, you know, welcome to Gimli Bible Camp. Here was a safe place for them to grieve and to kind of let out the emotions, and they did, and things came out at Gimli. Other really difficult situations. I can't quite get into all of them, but there was just lots going on in my cabin. These girls did not all get along. They were not pumped about the Bible and asking me questions. At devotion time, it sounded a lot more like, can I do my hair while we do this? Do I have to do this? It was more like that. And like, can I do my makeup? And I was like, you guys, like, get over here, we're doing this. But it was difficult, and what I found with them is, like, they weren't super interested in the Bible. But one evening I just started telling them stories about my own life and what Jesus has done in my life, and that they couldn't get enough of, that they had questions about, that they wanted to hear more about. Obviously my story, my testimony does not replace the gospel, that's not what I'm saying, but that they were interested in. And at the end of this week, one of these girls did give her life to Jesus after a major heavy breakdown. She had a really, really bad meltdown the last day of camp. Just relational stuff at camp and all the drama we had all week kind of came to a head, and she just like lost it, specifically on me. So I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom the very last night of camp, and the cabin leader comes running and she's like, Amanda, you've got to get back to your cabin, something's going down. I'm like, oh no, of course, and it's been this way all week. And so I run back to the cabin. This girl is raging. She's just raging. So she comes out of the cabin, and she actually just takes off. So I go in, and I'm like, what's going on? I have a girl crying on her bed in the fetal position. I have other girls angry, and I have other girls like, what's happening? And my other cabin leader, bless her, on the far side, she had kind of come from another cabin. Another camp. She had never cabin when I came to Bible Camp. She's like, Amanda, I don't know what to do. They were like yelling, and she was going to start hitting people, and I didn't know what to do. I'm like, okay. So we're just kind of like bringing calm in, and I'm like, hey, let's deal with the, girl in fetal position first. Let's talk to her. I'm like, are you okay? What do you need? And she was like scared. She's like, my dad used to yell at us like that. And she's like, I just need to hug my sister. And I'm like, okay, we can do that for you. Your sister's here. Let's go find your sister, get you a hug, and let's get you in bed. So while I'm taking this girl to her sister, this other girl's coming back, and she's still raging mad. So I just kind of physically got in her way. She was going to get back into the cabin, and she just lost it on me. She was just swearing and yelling at me, and it's like at first it made me feel really angry and really defensive, because I guess it's who I am. And then it's like, oh, are we going to fight here? And I was pretty sure this girl was going to hit me. So I had my hands in my pajama pockets, and we're talking, and I'm like, and as she's yelling at me, like, I can just see her face looking up into me, and the Lord just flooded me with love for this girl and just showed me how broken she was. And she was just at the end of herself. She was one of the girls who had just lost a sibling to a drug overdose, had also a year ago overdosed herself, not died, but had come through that. We're talking, she's 15. We're not talking 18, 20-year-olds here. These are kids. These are children. And just, she was so broken, and she just unloaded on me, and it was like, it was okay. And we came to an agreement. I was going to go back in the cabin and get her bedding. So I went back in the cabin, I gave her her bedding, she wrapped herself in her blanket, and she took off. She left the property in the dark, went out onto the road. And at that point, I switched off with another gal, JL, who is here often in summer, so probably you guys are a bit familiar with her. Anyway, long story short, the next morning that girl was so ashamed that she couldn't even look me in the face because she just felt like her behavior had been so bad, and she was just so ashamed. And I just went and I just grabbed her and looked her in the face, and I said her name, and she just burst into tears. So we spent the rest of that morning just talking, her and I, and she just didn't know how she would ever make things right with the other girls, with me. And I just explained to her that, you know what, you can't make things right with anybody else, and you can't be right in yourself because you're not right with God. Like, you're not right with your Creator. You're not right with your Savior, Jesus. You need to be right with Him first. Be forgiven by Him first, and then let's talk about making things right with these other girls. And she was like, how do I do this? How do I get Him? How do I become a Christian? And that is the highlight of my summer. I got to lead this girl to accept Jesus. And the fruit that she immediately bore was that she had peace on her face. And I asked her, I said, you look different. Like, how do you feel? And she told me, she said, my family doesn't really talk about emotions. I don't really know how to explain them. She says, but this is how I feel. She said, that's what she did. And I was like, that's called peace. Like, you feel peace. And that was a first for her, and that was just so touching. And she went to every single girl in the cabin and asked forgiveness and hugged them and just asked if they would please forgive her. And all of them did. And so I just saw her, like, her new faith working out immediately. And I don't get tired of sharing this story because I want her to come up in our minds, because it's very, very common at Gimli Bible Camp. The campers say, how do I stop how do I go home and stop this life when it's, my parents do this with me? How do I stop drugs when my parents do it with me? How do I stop drinking and partying and do this with my siblings? Like, it's at home. It's in my home. How do I stop? How do I change? And that is reality for a lot of kids. And so I don't get tired of telling the story because I want us to remember her and girls like her, because she went home and went right back into that environment, and she actually tried really hard, and she made some really good changes. She went with JL to youth group, which was a first for her in her whole life. And then things started to get a little wonky again. And it's like, we expect that, things changed immediately for her, but the road is rocky. And so girls like this and other campers, we need to continue praying for them that they can keep walking in peace and freedom. And we have a teen retreat coming up, I think this weekend. Next weekend? So the weekend after this weekend. And so far, I think 3 of my girls from this picture are signed up to go. And that's really a blessing for me, because it's like they come to camp and they taste peace and they meet Jesus. And it is so real. And it is so tangible that they want it so bad, and they go home and it feels so dry. And we know that Jesus is still there, but it is really hard for people to walk in that with no support. And so you guys got to know that when we have campers come and they give their lives to Jesus, like, we become their family. Even if you haven't met them, like, we become their family, we become their support group. And they need our prayers because it's so hard. So yeah, as you look at these girls and as you think about it, not just our camp, but other camps and beyond camp. But as we share the light of Jesus with people who don't yet live for Him, we need to have hope, and we need to be praying. So yeah, those are some of the highlights of my summer.
Yeah, so my heart's really stirred, as I hope yours is, for Gimli Bible Camp and the campers there, right? So you can break it down really simply. I want Jesus to save kids at Gimli Bible Camp, right? I want Jesus to equip kids, right, once they're saved, to come back and to just get tools to follow Jesus, and also just life skills. Lots of our kids lack a lot of life skills. So I want Jesus to save them, I want Jesus to equip them, and I also want Jesus to send them. I want them to be missional in heart. So wherever they go, like, put on kingdom for Jesus. And when we're serving Him, it's like then we're on the right track. So it's really my heart and my prayer. So one day I'd be so pumped, right? This girl that Mando was sharing about, right? One day, man, would I just be pumped to hear her on the mission field, just sharing, right, her story, the good news. It's just amazing how that works and how Jesus works through the really little things. So we can change slides over here. So that's in a nutshell the ministry of Gimli Bible Camp. And this year, as we're looking ahead at this year, it's like, man, I'm excited for another year where we're going to see lots of good fruit. We had a really good core team coming back of young people who just love Jesus, and I'm really encouraged by the young people, not just in Manitoba, but around the world, right, that are just really, I don't know, just falling in love with Jesus and just surrendering lots of stuff. It's powerful. So we have over 20 churches represented by our summer missionary team, and they come and they get the mission, right? They get it, that the kids are broken. They get it, that they don't have the skills and they can't do the change on their own, and that we need to be desperately dependent on God. Right? They get it, and that's an amazing place to be. It's amazing to work with young people that are like that. So we have some staff that will quit their jobs, right, and then come work at summer for 2 months, right? And it's just amazing again because they just love the ministry, and it's like summer is so hard for them, but they couldn't think of not doing the summer at Gimli Bible Camp, right? To just rub shoulders with these kids, to hear the hard stories, and just to pray with them and stuff. So as we go out, we're just looking for more partnerships with our camp, with the churches across Manitoba, opportunities. So on the slide here, there's just a couple different events coming up. We'd love to see you guys. We love your prayers for them. We just love engagement, and also ambassadors. Just spread the word of what's going on. So May 11th, we have a work day at camp from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. May 22nd, we have a Seniors Day. So this is for anyone who is a senior. It's for anyone who wants to be a senior. And it's also for seniors who don't want to be seniors but are. Just come on down. Right? So it's really inclusive there. It's going to be a lot of good. It's going to be really good. We'll have a lot of fellowship. We're going to share testimonies. I'll have a bunch of my summer team there already and stuff. And we're going to play outdoor games. And it's going to be a good event. We look forward to it. We did it last year. It was really good. We have an open house coming up on June 2nd. Again, just an awesome opportunity to engage our community. We haven't had one for a number of years, and just looking forward to that. So again, just invitation, come out, come enjoy it. You'll probably hear more details about it, and just really hoping it's going to be, big event. And the last point, so right behind me here, and if you got a phone and you know how to do the QR code thing, feel free, get your phone out. Get your camera on it, and it'll bring you to the sign-up page. And I'll also get Pastor Richard to send an email to you guys. So I got a little sign-up form just so we know numbers and stuff. But last little bit here. So it's just an idea I feel the Lord put on my heart, and it's a little fundraising initiative for Gimli Bible Camp. So we call it Fish and Loaves 1,000 at 5. So just the idea that Jesus uses the little things, and it's just amazing how he multiplies them. And you see stories all across the Bible, right? Jesus just using people who aren't really anything, using a little bit and just multiplying, and just the generosity. It's just amazing, right? So I'm like, oh man, what if we could get just 1,000 people, right, giving $5 a month? Because then also what is a small gift, right, multiplies into something so much bigger. And that's just amazing. So we know inflation's hit all of us. Things have gotten quite expensive. And it's hitting the families we work with even harder. Right, so our low-income families, it's like they struggled already with grocery bills before things really went up. And then never mind feeding 2 of you, 4 of you, a family, right? It's like at camp, it's like we're feeding 100 people plus each meal. And those prices, they really rocket up. So we just want money to not be a hindrance for kids coming and hearing the gospel, the good news. So we're just looking for more people to partner. So we want never to say no, and we also want there to be quality in the food. And our kids, when they come and talk about meals at home and stuff, man, it's some sad situations. So in that, I just want to jump into the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. So I'm going to read it from Mark 6, and it starts in verse 30. So Mark 6, 30 to 44. Again, it's just an amazing miracle that Jesus did, and there's so many more layers to it, and I hope you'll be encouraged like I am today. The apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, "Let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while." He said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. So they left by a boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. But many people recognized them and saw them leaving. And people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of him. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat." But Jesus said, "You feed them." "With what?" they asked. "We'd have to work for months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people." "How much bread do you have?" he asked. "Go and find out." They came back and reported, "We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." Then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looking up toward heaven, and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread to the disciples so they could distribute it to the people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftover bread and fish. A total of 5,000 men and their families were fed that day. So we can switch slides. Sorry, I forgot to say that. So this is a really profound miracle, right? It's amazing. Jesus takes just a small little bit and multiplies it and feeds 5,000 plus people. It's incredible, right? And we see it in all 4 Gospels, and it's really interesting to read the different accounts of it, right? You're getting someone's different perspective, and you get different angles on it, and it's just, wow, it's really rich in that way. I just want to dig into the context of it a little bit. Again, it just helps us understand what's going on here a bit more. So it doesn't give us a great deal into the stories, and I wish it would expound on this, because this would probably be some pretty incredible accounts of the apostles. Right, but it says in verse 30, the apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all they had taught and done. Right, so this is when Jesus sent them out 2 by 2, right, to go into villages, to go into towns, to go preach the good news, to cast out demons, to heal the sick. Right, so this is where the disciples are returning from that. So imagine again the stories, right? Imagine being told by Jesus, don't take any money with you, don't take an extra set of clothes, right? You can wear shoes and you can wear what you're wearing and go. Right? And a simple set of rules to go with that. Right? Incredible. I could just imagine, again, the stories that they came with, right? The high highs in that, and also just the tiredness. Right? Again, at Gimli Bible Camp, I can just picture it, right? Working a week in this, man, we're loving the kids and we're praying. There's so much good and there's so much hardship, right? On their ministry tour, I bet they met lots of opposition. Stuff, and we're just exhausted after a week of care. Right? So at the beginning, it's like, the apostles, the disciples, and Jesus, they wanted to escape to a quiet place. And it's like, yes, I get that. After summer, it's like nothing more than let's escape and let's go to a quiet place for a long time. Makes lots of sense. But there's another thing here, another really big thing just before this, right? And it's that John the Baptist gets beheaded. And so this was Jesus' cousin, right? And the disciples would have known him well, right? And this is the man who paved the way for Jesus in his ministry. Right, so talk about, again, just really heavy news to sit with, right? Jesus and his cousin John. They would have been close, right? And it's so much ministry wrapped in this, right? So here we get, really high highs and really low lows, and it's all mixed together. And I can just imagine the emotion, right? And the text says they were so busy doing ministry that they didn't have time to eat. There were so many people around. All right, so they're hungry, but some of them are really pumped by what Jesus did, and some are really sad, some are really scared. So this is a lot of emotions going on for this. So there's a lot of wisdom here with Jesus, and we see this pattern throughout his ministry, right? That he would retreat, that he would go to solitude alone, he would spend time with the Father, right? And he grabbed his group of disciples, and they were going to go somewhere quiet, and they were going to grieve. Man, and there's a lot of wisdom in that. So it's just when we're going through hard times in our life, when we're grieving, get people who love you really well and retreat with them a little bit, right? Don't go do it alone, right? But grab some people and go and spend time with Jesus. There's so much power and community in that. So, moving on in the story here. Again, it's amazing living in Gimli. We get a little bit more of eyesight into how the story unfolds and how lots of story unfolds, right? We live in a fishing town, fishing village, right? So did Jesus in his ministry. So this is kind of how I picture it. And just follow me with this. So let's say that Jesus and his disciples are ministering at Gimli Bible Camp, right? 2 miles down the road. And they're getting really tired because we're overwhelming them with all their needs and we're just pushing them to the limit. So they're like, oh, okay, we need to go escape. So we're going to go to Willow Island. Right? So that's a little island just down south here a little bit. So Gimli Bible Camp, they're going across there. Right? And as they're rowing, it's like they're looking forward to their little retreat they're going to have out on the island. They're right, a little bit more secluded, away from the business. They see this little group from Gimli Bible Camp just hauling it along the beach, right, running along. And they pass through Kings Park, and then they pass through Bellarkin Beach and Lonely Beach, and all of a sudden this crowd is getting bigger and bigger, right? And it's noticeable up from the water because it's like the crowd is gathering in size as they're going through, right? These different parts of Gimli, and they go through Gimli and South Beach, and the crowd would be substantial, right? And it's like Jesus and the disciples could see the crowd like growing and running along the beach, which I think you probably could if it's growing to 5,000 people that are coming along. Right? That would be a sinking feeling, I think, if you were looking for a place to retreat. At least I would sure have a sinking feeling. So, and just again, like something that really stands out to me is like the people ran, right? They were running to catch up to where Jesus was. Did they have a guarantee they'd get to where he was going? I don't know, right? But they were just going for it, and they didn't come prepared, right? They didn't know how far they were running, right? They didn't know how long they'd spend time with Jesus. In the story, it seems like only one boy brought food along, right? Because the disciples went out among the people looking for food, and there was one boy who had the 3 loaves and 2 fish. So no one brought food, but man, they just dropped what they were doing, dropped their jobs, and were just running. And that's a really, really beautiful thing and a really challenging thing for us. So these are the 2 huge takeaways that I get from this story. Number 1, Jesus' grace and mercy is just really incredible in this story. And then we need that grace and mercy, right? So again, I picture myself, right? It's like really tired, right? And there's mourning loss of a best friend, right? And you got these disciples who are all mixed up emotionally, and you got to debrief with them and stuff like that. And you're going somewhere's quiet, and that's a wonderful thing. It's like, oh, I'd be so excited to do that. But then you see this huge crowd coming, and it's like, you know what this means, right? And Jesus sees them and says he has compassion and he has mercy on them, right? He saw them as sheep without a shepherd. He stepped out of the boat, and it wasn't like, let's hop back in the boat and we're going to go off to the other side. Again, right? There was nothing like that. And that's just amazing to see his grace and mercy so evident in it, and it's such a testimony of the gospel in our lives. So when we find ourselves in challenging and tough situations, when we're able to extend grace and mercy to people, and people see the peace that we have in our lives, even though life's challenges are immense, it's like that really points to what Jesus is in our lives, right? And that really testifies who he is. Number 2, and I alluded to this lots already, but we need to pursue Jesus with everything we have. Right? Again, this crowd is just running along and they're grabbing friends and saying, hey, Jesus is in that boat over there and we're chasing after him. Like, come, let's go. And people are just dropping what they're doing without forethought. It's like, man, where Jesus is, we need to be. Right? And that's such a powerful thing, such a beautiful thing. I love it. It says that they ran along the beach. I just love it. It's so challenging. And the next thing he says, so moving in the story, right, it's getting late, and the disciples are like, man, Jesus, we need to send them on, right? We don't have food, and we'd have to work for months to feed this group, right? And Jesus just says to them very simply, it's like, you feed them, right? And it's like, oh, what can this statement say, right? We have to work for months, Jesus. How can we feed them, right? And again, it's interesting reading through the Bible. And reading the Israelites, right, and seeing the miracles God did for them, and seeing the miracles God did through Jesus for the disciples, and yet they're not quite thinking outside the box, right? It's like, oh, we got to think this how it would work logically. It's like we would need to go work for months, and then we could get money, and then we could go to the farm, and we could buy food, and that's our process. Yet Jesus is like, you feed them, right? And we read in some of the other gospel accounts here, it's like it was a bit of a test, right? It's like these guys just went on a ministry tour. They didn't take anything with them, right? And they proclaimed good news to the captive. And they healed people, and they cast out demons, and they saw Jesus' power at work. Right? And it's like, oh, like, did it not cross any of their minds? Right? Like, yeah, let's just pray. It's like, oh, Jesus, how do we feed them? Right? Just that question there. And just a side note in it too, I think it's just a beautiful part that slipped in about the kids. So it's not in all the Gospels, right? But it's like they found a boy, and he had this food, right? And good on him to give it up. If it was one of our kids and they were really hungry, it would be hard-pressed to get them to give up a meal. Right? But maybe this little boy knew, maybe he had heard stories of Jesus, and just a beautiful thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to give it up. So I bet something's going to happen here, right? So faith of children is so beautiful. As I come to the end here, I just think, oh, I just feel like Jesus' words resonate for us. And that you do it, right? God's given us talents and gifts and abilities, right? And he is so full of grace and mercy for us in what he's given us and what he expects, right? So he gets us to go work, right? And he pulls us in for rest. And this balance of that is so wonderful, so beautiful. I think we need to get in the game. And the line we use at camp quite a bit is that it's not a sprint to the finish, but it's a marathon, right? And this makes lots of sense. It's not about the start, though starting the race is really important, right? But it's the race, it's the endurance, it's the hard part. And running a marathon is hard, right? It's challenging, and there's lots of pain that goes with that. But it's about finishing well, and Jesus is with us to help us finish well. And as we're working, at Gimli Bible Camp, and as Jesus says, like, you feed them, it's like our heart is to feed these kids the good news, to give them the hope, to be salty, right, to be bright lights, right? And we see the young people look up to us for example, like, what does this look like, right? And the same can be for us and our families. Like, we look up to you guys to see how you're running the race, right? And we're cheering you on, right? And we're encouraged and we're challenged, right? And we see that in our own parents as well, and grandparents, right? And the legacy of faith is impressive in that, right? Just the ability to suffer and to go through hard things, but just to sit in God's grace and mercy, even though it's tough. So keep running the race well, and feed the sheep, because they have a shepherd in Jesus, and we need to hear the good news. So let me pray for you guys. Father, I thank you so much for your word. Thank you that you are a God who just loves us so deeply. We thank you for your grace and mercy that you just give unto us just relentlessly. Lord, we are so thankful for that. Help us to go out and just to be full of grace and mercy for other people. Lord, and help us to just be aware of where you're calling us to go feed them. Lord, we know there are so many lost and hurting people in this community, around us, in our families. God, so help us to go out and just to be faithful with what you've given us. And we're just so grateful that we can offer a little bit, Lord, maybe a couple loaves and a little bit of fish, and we're just able to multiply it into something really beautiful and really powerful. God, so just stoke our faith, stir us on. Lord, help us to pursue you with everything that you've given us. Lord, help us to run after you. Lord, help us to have faith to move mountains, Lord, and again, just help us to run the race well, God, and just to endure, again, the bumps and the bruises, the hardships, the trials, the sicknesses, and the mourning deaths, Lord. All of it, Lord, we thank you that you give us grace and mercy for that. And Lord, help us just to retreat into you when we need to back up, Lord, from the busyness of life and the hardships of life. Lord, help us always to retreat to you and spend time with our Father as you set an example for us, God. So thank you, Lord, so much for all you bless us with. In your name, Jesus, amen.